Every jungler that reached Challenger started where you are now. And throughout the many thousands of games, they learned basically everything there is to know about the role. And now, despite all the clickbait on YouTube, it wasn't the one magical tip that they used that got them there. It was the other 99 tips and habits that they used every single game, no matter what champion they're playing, no matter what meta they're in. And so in this jungle movie, we will cover all of the Challenger scenarios to give you those 99 tips and tricks and habits that can practically guarantee that you reach Challenger. Now, the first thing here that separates you from a Challenger jungler, or if you're already doing it, is indicative that you might too one day be a Challenger jungler, is your ability to have the most laser edge perfect understanding of your game plan relevant to the enemy jungler as well as lanes. But there's also a critical philosophy as laners get involved into this strategy. Here's how. We had a great example on the coaching channel with this Rammus jungle who did his red side quadrant. He started Raptors, red Krugs, and I said, ooh, that's interesting. Maybe we're gonna go ahead and gank the bottom side. Maybe we're gonna go ahead and do that and maybe just go to the mid lane if bottom lane isn't doable. However, he simply looped back like a Fiddlesticks would and did a full clear, except it was so damn slow that by the time he finished his blue, the scuttle crab was up. And now you can look at it and say, well, yeah, that's a great gank that you should get off. Now we are going to have to fall back to our grump and give up that scuttle crab. But the point more so is, why did we opt for a full clear, and what was the enemy jungler going to do? There was no thought process there, and the clear was simply to not make your bottom lane leash, but it didn't help you optimize your own game plan. My solution directly was essentially, why didn't you just cut out the Krugs? Or if you wanted to make sure you took those two edge camps in the Krugs and the grump, you go red Krugs, Raptors, or Wolves, emphasis on the or there. You pick Raptors or Wolves, and then you do the grump plus the blue. This means that when all your camps respawn, you're getting the respawn experience juice of Krugs and grump, and so that helps you slingshot your experience should you want to spend some time ganking. And everyone was like, well, that's a little weird. And I said, well, I made a video about it, predicting this would be a clear in the beginning of season 13. No one has done it. I've done it, but no one else has done it until now. On the gameplay channel last night, I covered a Korean Vice strategy and build, and what happened was we were against a Hecarim. We see the Hecarim going from the top side to the bottom side. You know as a Vi, or whoever your jungler is, hey, I cannot full clear as fast as you. If I want to match your ganking tempo for the bottom side, I'm going to have to skip a camp. So what she does is red Krugs Raptors with the intent of, look, I can go to the mid lane if there's something available, and then I can go to the bot lane afterwards, or there's nothing available on the mid lane, I can simply skip the Wolves, do the blue, do the grump, and arrive absolutely perfectly on time for a juicy counter gank that just snowballs the entire game out of control. All because she knew which lane she wanted to gank, but she also knew which lane the Hecarim wanted to gank. She also reconciled the clears together, made the proactive decision to cut a camp out so that she could match the tempo, and thus her tempo control was there. To me, I was so excited because I was hypothetically talking about this to this Rammus play on the coaching channel, and then immediately the next day I see a challenge if I do the exact same damn thing, and honestly, it's not often that I see this clear in the wild, but that's not just it, right? That doesn't make you a Challenger jungler, because you can be a Viega who also goes Raptors, red Krugs, and then decides to gank bottom lane if there's nothing invade, and then gank the mid lane, and then maybe you want to fall back down and kind of shadow the Lee Sin because you know he started top side, went to the bottom side, and will try effectively gank the mid lane thinking you should be going up. All of these mind games, all of these early game plans that matter and don't matter. If you cannot read the enemy jungler, anticipate their moves, and get in their head, you're not going to be able to have the best optimization for your own early game. Fortunately for you, I have a cohesive gameplay example from more Challenger players to showcase to you exactly what this looks like. Much like you're seeing with this Bel'Veth, because what happens? We start on the Raptors. Why do we start on the Raptors? For the same exact damn reason everyone else is starting on the Raptors. Bot lane gets to go leashless, I get to flex my clear as necessary, red Raptors Krugs, red Krugs Raptors, whatever the hell I want to do. The Karthus has done standard stuff, hey, I'm a farming jungler bros, I'm a warp my red so I'm protected against those dangerous red buff and Krug invades, because as we all know as we go to the map, Karthus is like to sequence from blue all the way up. They get a leash, they do it, it's predictable. We all know this. If you're being invaded by a Karthus because you try to full clear with them and they kind of finish the Krugs and move into your blue side, you know that's on you because you should have game planned for this and understood that they're just that much faster than you at full clearing. So what can you do about it? Well, cut out clear short and maybe do an invade on the red. That's quite tough for most champions, so we usually invade on the Krugs. The Bel'Veth, on the other hand, decides to move up that timeline because not only does she disagree with that strategy in terms of sequencing, she says, well, the guy's gonna go from blue to grump. He has exhaust. I can just move on over and, you know, kill him and then take his stuff or whatever's available. Maybe I get the grump as well. Either way, the goal is to kill him, take his blue, compromise him, and now I can fall back to my red. What an absolute exquisite way to move up the timeline in a very Kindred, Jarvan, Shaco, Graves, Nidalee kind of methodology, you know what I mean? We kind of use our mobility or our secret clearings to have that element of surprise over the Karthus, and that therein is essentially the first thing summarized. Can you have the element of surprise by outthinking your opponent because you understand their champion and their jungling better than they do, while also understanding your own. Obviously, that is all the information on this channel and all the channels, and it ain't easy, but you have to learn to implement it. But the next step, it's not finished. We have to keep this pressure up, right? That's the biggest thing that you'll see in mid and low MMRs is they'll make one play like this, dust their hands off and think, cool, game is over. No, it isn't. Obviously, the Karthus knows that Bel'Veth is going to need to go to her red at this particular stage because the Karthus got the grump. He is at level 3 advantage. So what the Bel'Veth does is go to the red into the wolves. The Karthus, on the other hand, as you would have seen, ganked the top lane, got himself a cheeky kill, and now what? What's left for him? He has no grump, he only has wolves, he has Krugs and Raptors. So he's 99.99% going to the Krugs into the Raptors. The Bel'Veth says, hey, look, if I was a low elo jungler, not a challenger jungler, I would let him get away with that. But I'm challenger, therefore, I'm gonna shadow this, watch and extrapolate his pathing, go ahead and kill him because he's got exhaust and no flash. Even in that case, if he did have flash, he used it on the first blood kill, so it doesn't matter. We go to the scuttle. Now we could always cross and compete for the bottom scuttle depending on prios, or we could just say, hey, look, top's diveable, let's kill them. Yes, it is a top lane fight. This player does play it in Challenger Korea, so it is a thing, like the top Kayn things that are going around. It do be that way. We go ahead and stack the Krugs, go back to base, so Karthus ganks the bottom lane, and as you would have seen, also falls, at least giving himself some sort of cash money infusion. Now, the Bel'Veth is going to head to the bottom side because we know the Karthus upon respawn will most likely go to his Raptors and then look ideally to sequence down to take his Wolves and the second spawn Grump. That in theory is the safe move. Again, we're thinking about what he wants to do. So anyone who's seen the Bad Habits video knows I spoke about, hey, stop leaving these one camp quadrants available. Why do you leave one camp up and then go somewhere else? Because in this case, it was fine to leave the Grump on the blue on the top side because we were making a guaranteed high percentage play that would net us a huge advantage and denial at the same time. The problem with those Gromps being left in gold games is that you're going for a terrible gank assessment that you shouldn't have gone for in the first place. And all of a sudden, the Bel'Veth runs into the Karthus to go for the 1v1, the exhaust is used, and the Karthus dies. That's part of the game. We had no bot prio, we had no real mid prio. Running into his jungle to show him the size of your wing flaps isn't exactly what you want to be doing when you don't have the lane prio, especially if you're coin flipping. So what we could have done is just do the second spawn wolves, we can eventually do our grump and our blue, but the Bel'Veth had seen, oh look, Alawi's pushing a little bit on the mid lane, we want to get that pre-level 6 gank, let me move after wolves to get that gank done. Oh, look at Karthus, okay, he dies. So you have to reconcile, look, I plan on this happening, and when it doesn't happen, I'm still ready to mechanically make a play, use the lead I have, and then also go, okay, well that means his blue side camps are available now because he died on the bottom side. He's only got +4 CS over the last time I saw him, which means he went from 19 to 23 because he did the Raptors. So because he did this random unexpected thing, I get a benefit from it and I know exactly where he's going to be next because he didn't do the thing I thought he was going to do. And that's how you deal with randomness, my friends. It's something I talk a lot about in all of my coaching and all of my courses. It just allows you to really deal with the problem with ease. Junglers not doing what you expect them to do doesn't mean you have an excuse not to track them or defeat them. So now as Bel'Veth, we do the Krugs, we get level 6. We want to go and look to see what's available bottom side. Why? Because our red buff isn't up yet, our Raptors aren't up yet, and we have time to kill. So we know the Karthus should 100% be on the wolves and the grump taking a second spawn blue. We investigate, we leave vision, we have a probing. And of course Bel'Veth is good at probing. And instead, nothing's there, which means what, my friends? Karthus will be going to the top side to take the top scuttle, to take his top Krugs, to maybe take something else if I wait down here too long. So we'll turn on the dragon. So that there's another thing that we can think about in terms of what separates us from challenger junglers. Not only is it this level of tracking and reconciliation of game plans and pathing, this is all under the same umbrella, but it's also the ability to straight up know exactly how to keep that pressure sustained and also to know exactly where you need to path in order to match win cons for yourself and by extension your lanes. Remember, I told you your lanes will get involved. We dove top lane early, we were looking to gank mid lane when we ran into him last time, and we looked to gank bot lane before the dragon. And because the lanes were okay, we didn't have to do much, but in games where they are gankable, you can do much. Now, we know the Karthus is rent-free on his top side, and I don't think I really like that. Therefore, we know he's going to take the top scuttle. Let's use our true form to cut through, use your mobility, whatever your champion is, let's get in his face again. Bel'Veth does exactly that, takes the red, Krugs, Herald. Karthus decides, look, I know that you know that I'm going to go to the bottom side now, therefore, I will not go to the bottom side, and I will invest in a gank on the top side because for the life of me, I'm not going to be able to do anything in this game by farming when you're tracking me and I'm giving away my position. Challenge a mindset of, hey, let's shift expectations. Unfortunately, we all have limit testing moments, so Bel'Veth goes ahead and limit tests between two turrets against Tentacle Lady, and Alawi's tentacles prove to be a lot greater than the tentacles from Bel'Veth's head, and she dies. Vi pushes turrets, decides to go into the blue side jungle. Karthus is obviously going to be counter jungling. Bel'Veth sees this, rotates over from base instead of going to the bottom side, kills Vi, takes her scuttle, tries to get in the face of taking Raptors. Karthus pulls them and smites them. That's why kiting is important. Instead of falling back to her blue side for that ISO blue and wolf camp, she says, no, I'm crossing over to my red side because I know that the Karthus will now go down. The Karthus says, yeah, I probably will, so I'm just gonna go up again to stay away from you. This means Bel'Veth gets to go ahead and do Raptors, red, Krugs, loop bottom lane, no gank, unlucky. Go mid lane, yes a gank, now we can use a Herald. Karthus also shows top side, we know he's most likely going to the blue, so we can translate that to even further plays. The point here though is, use your unfair advantage. Challenger players will always do that. That's why they play the strongest champions. They leverage their strong mechanics, and they go ahead and use those for leads and wins and LP gains. There's no sense of ethics in terms of, look, this champion's broken, don't play it. I know we like to meme it, I like to meme it, and that's fine, but when it comes down to all seriousness, if you're gonna get Challenger and you want to do it, abuse the rules of your champion in the best possible way. Along with advancing your game plan properly versus the enemy jungler, as well as your own, along with keeping that sustained pressure to deny them, for the rest of the game, and along with using your unfair advantage, whatever it might be in case of Bel'Veth, map mobility with true form plus fishies and herald, it's really, really strong to push the map and take the game to the mid game. We all have something in our champion's kit, maximize it. And yes, we all have lapses as well. You're focusing on something, you're not going to notice something really small on the map that showed and gives away what the Karthus is doing. In this particular case, she assumes that Karthus hasn't taken a blue side, goes to the top side after using the Herald, tries to get Vi, holds the wave, oh shit, Dragon is spawning, and the other jungler is down there taking it and all my camps are gone. Probably should have just stolen his blue look to do something bottom lane, rather than blindly go to the top lane to hunt wild poros. Either way, we lose the dragon, we have a fight, we do fall unfortunately, you have to pay attention to these kinds of things, but the whole enemy team is totally aced, so we're okay with the result. However, it would have been better to be better positioned for this fight. Nonetheless, we rotated, we made plays, we're still in a good position. So I did mention, hey, don't leave one camp in a quadrant in the bad habits video for low elo, and the Bel'Veth is doing it yet again, ignoring the Krugs to go Raptors, Wolves, Grub, so that she can sequence perfectly for the spawn of the Rift Herald. That's the difference, my friends. There is an inherent purpose to the pathing. The Krugs are out of the way, they won't allow me to snack them. I want to ensure I'm moving around the map to get the objectives necessary to end this game. Obviously, this will allow us a really great push if the enemy mispositions, which of course they do, and now the Bel'Veth can use her unfair advantage again. High hyper carry damage plus an insane amount of macro shove. We can open up the mid game unlike any other jungler. You kill the Allow, you shove, you see Karthus somewhere else, remember to take all of their camps as you retreat from the top lane. We get an inhibitor turret for that. We're also able to recoalesce after taking our camps and shoving them out of their own jungle for a mid lane push. At this point, we had a lot of gold, so maybe a little bit of an overstay, but you've got to push your lead and keep tempo and momentum, very crucial in the mid game. And as she will respawn going for a more tank Veth approach here, not really one of the core builds I would recommend for those looking to climb, she will get a GA in the end. However, the Black Cleaver attack is great, and the itemization is largely irrelevant to what happens for the rest of the game because she's so damn far ahead. She has a reset, she has the shoves, and you will see highlights of that now. If you're interested in a point-by-point about how to close in this situation, I will leave a link to that directly in the bottom. It's largely the same when you have this kind of lead as long as you're disciplined, but hopefully you can see the dynamic nature of your early game is so important in terms of getting the right advantage over the enemy jungler and then basically denying them with perpetual energy and pressure, navigating lanes while you do that as well. Sometimes they will be gankable, sometimes they won't be. Ensure to keep that pressure up and then leverage your unfair advantage, whatever that might be. If it's AFK farming and getting 15 CS a minute and outscaling without much challenge, do it. If it's split pushing and getting a lot of turrets when they misposition like Bel'Veth, do that. If it's being Evelyn and permanently camouflaged such that you can pick people off and never allow them to teamfight, you use that also. Maximize your champion's unfair advantage with these other two things, and trust me, you will notice a huge difference in the cascade of your jungle tempo to victory. So we have a video with a Neeko jungle and we have a video with a Lee Sin jungle showcasing a few different playstyles. We will start off with the Lee Sin jungle because the mechanics in this are absolutely ridiculous. Then we'll follow up with the Neeko jungle to showcase how it's applied from the blue side and with a different context, and also how it would shut down this Lee Sin jungle as well. So we have both sides of the domination coin. So you would have seen the Rengar's team kill the Annie in the mid lane. You're the Lee Sin, they see you, they know where you are starting. You also know where the Rengar is starting because it's 111 when he disappears going up. He will start blue, you will start Raptors. Now the mind games begin already. We've talked about the jungle decision making a lot recently, but because we are pathing in the same direction, it shifts our idea of what we want to accomplish. That one of control is either take away one of the things that the enemy jungler wants to do, or two, do something that makes them feel they are forced to do something later on. In this case, we could go ahead and do red Krugs Raptors and gank the bottom lane maybe. We know Rengar's pathing that side, which means that's a little bit more dangerous. So let's take the guaranteed play. And that's the early phase thing, fundamental number one, make the guaranteed play. Raptors, red Krugs, kill the Cassandre. We know the Rengar is going to be pathing to the bottom side and will not be able to rotate to this without compromising way too much of his game plan. This means we need to go back to base, get itemization advantage, and as we saw in a video earlier in the month, and I will leave a link to that below just called the video from earlier in the month, this idea doesn't always work if the blue side jungler makes the right play or wins the 1v1. In this particular case, the Lee Sin decides, look, I need to go to the bottom lane. I know the Rengar's going to finish his clear, look to gank it, and look to take the Scuttle Crab. Rengar shows, and Rengar does exactly what he's meant to do. Full clear, gank the bottom lane, except wait a second, he didn't full clear. He cut out the Crook camp. This is the kind of tempo adjustment I am talking about. So you can take the guaranteed play, that's one, and then number two is making sure you can adjust the tempo in your favor. If Rengar stays and finishes the Krugs, it gives the Lee Sin time to go back to base, buy his longsword, and come down to the bottom lane to counter gank me. So why don't I skip the Krugs and then gank the bottom lane before Lee Sin can rotate? Lee Sin now can spend his time doing the wolf camp because there's nothing he can do about that. But the Rengar should know he has itemization deficit against the Lee Sin. They start the 1v1. The Ziggs wants to base. Both the Ziggs and the Senna cancel what they're doing to rotate to help the Rengar, who still gets killed. The Lee Sin makes a Giga outplay to kill the Senna as well. The Syndra shows up, he hits a Q on her, uses magnificently fluid mechanics to get over the wall, and still unfortunately dies, but holy hell was that cool. That's because it's owner of T1 playing Lee Sin. Now the bottom lane and mid laners keep fisting each other and everything goes a little bit shit sideways, but the thing is, if the Rengar said, hey look, why don't I just go back to base, or why don't I go to the Krugs, then base with my double cash money gold kill and go ahead and take the top scuttle away from Lee Sin, that would be a pretty good play because the Lee Sin would have to do his blue, his Gromp, he'll take the bottom scuttle. Yes, he's gonna invest time into that side, but you could of course take the double kill you've had and reinvest it into the top side. Now you could counter jungle his Krugs and Raptors as well. So the fight is great and he's lucky his lane is rotated, but the Lee Sin made a really nice lemonade out of that lemon. And of course, because he respawns with his blue and Gromp available, he knows the Scuttle Crab is still up, and he sees the fight is extended. The Lee Sin will rotate and try and help his lane and get some cleanup kills. He's not going to focus camps. If you're an aggressive jungler, your Warwicks, Rek'Sais, Elises, you know, your carnivore junglers, then this is the kind of play you want to make. The Rengar is, while a carnivore-style jungler, is really an omnivore because he wants to snowball and scale. That video will be linked below as well, just types of junglers if you don't really know what we mean. But the carnivores are usually your aggressive early game junglers and your omnivores are usually your scalers. So he does his wolf, sees what's happening, says, I'm going to take that topside scuttle as well. I will take your Raptors, and instead of wasting my time taking the Krugs, I will dive the Gragas, which I can kill with the Cassandre. Nicely done, very smooth. And so the Rengar's one mistake here was taking an unguaranteed play. For the Lee Sin, it was a great play because he had the itemization advantage and still got 2 kills from it. But the Rengar obviously saw the Lee Sin, makes a good proactive play while he's dead. Always the most important thing, it's not just about the camps, and takes a little bit of that tempo back. Now the Lee Sin's gonna respawn, and so essentially there's no point going to the top side. And here's that third fundamental, the strategic aggressive play. This is important because it's not just for carnivore junglers, it's for any jungler in the game. I know I can abuse vision by shadowing my mid lane pushing in and go and take that Raptor camp. I know the Rengar's going to be sequencing from top to bottom after the dive. Can I snack this and get out before anyone rotates? The answer is a resounding yes. Obviously, the enemy support is allowed to roam at this particular stage. Always pay attention to roam timers, death timers, respawn timers. Now, while the last couple of videos have been building up to this video on total control, if you haven't seen those, the Rengar at this stage will know the Lee Sin has taken his Raptor camp and will detach. He knows now there's only Krug camp on the bottom side, and his bottom lane isn't exactly in a good position for him to gank, counter gank, or dive. So instead of trying to wrestle tempo with the Lee Sin in a 50-50 fight, just swaps and goes to the top side. The Lee Sin knows that Rengar's most likely going to make that situation because they understand the game. The Lee Sin sees the Senna, knows that his bottom lane is smacking those turrets away and she will have to go back to the bottom side, and knows that Rengar will either go to the top side and make a counterplay, or try and counter gank him on the bottom side. Either way, I'm stronger as the Lee Sin in this moment, so we will go for the dive. If Rengar shows, we will make the mechanical plays necessary to kill him as well. So the aggressive play from the Lee Sin is saying, okay, Rengar stole my stuff, I'm going to steal his stuff. Now I know because I stole it and he knows that I stole it, he's going to stay on the other side so I can make an aggressive dive for my laners as well. From there, you can fall back to your camps and your dragons. Now Rengar takes a while to show. He invests a lot of time into that top lane gank on Gragas and doesn't get anything. From the Lee Sin's perspective, we don't exactly know if he waited and went back to base, so there's no point forcing a dragon unnecessarily when your bot lane wants to reset. When your bot lane is low, when your bot lane wants to go back to base, you know, involuntarily through death. That dragon take at the wrong moment is what costs a lot of junglers the ability to get to diamond, to get to master, and yes, even to get to gold. The obsessive nature over dragons. But at this stage, it's been a long while since the Rengar has really done anything on the bottom side, so Lee Sin probably thinks, okay, look, I can either go to the top side, take those camps and take the Herald, or I can assume that Rengar is gonna try and go for that anyway, and you know what, I don't care because I want to, one, take all the stuff away, make sure my bottom lane maintains their lead, and obviously get that juicy dragon for myself and my homies. Now, the most important thing here is the Rengar says, I need to go to the bottom side. Lee Sin decides, look, straight out of base again. Don't do my camps and then look for action. If I have a tempo advantage, maintain it. The Rengar tried to normalize it but wasn't able to do so with the top lane gank. So go and gank, make a play if it's makeable. And if you then have to fall back to your camps to reward yourself, do so. And that's the fourth fundamental here. Don't throw away strong tempo control for some camps that you don't need to take and you could take later. In this case, we push the Syndra off, we burn the flash. We then go and try and take the Raptors. Rengar shows up. Push him out because you just created prior from mid and you have that 1v1 advantage. Now you can take his Raptors, take his red, fall back to the Ocean Dragon. That's kind of the fifth fundamental here, that outside in rule, but we talk about it every video. Take the things that you can take from the outermost point, then fall back. So in this case, it's red, then the dragon. Hey, and then we can fall back to our camps if there's nothing, but we can also go and, kill bot lane again. And this is where Rengar totally lost control of the game because he let the Lee Sin keep that tempo advantage, try to hover bot lane, and basically just had to wait. Wait and wait and wait. What should he have done once he lost his red? Just go topside. Ditch and say, okay, look, I can't contest. I know you're going to kill my bot lane, but I can take your whole red side. I can take the Herald. I can snowball Kasante, which is what he should be doing, normalizing that advantage from the Lee Sin side so that that control is still shared and not one jungler has it over the other. As soon as you understand how to play outward with river control, and always reward yourself with camps after the good plays you've made, especially as a more carnivore omnivore style jungler, you're going to notice yourself having a lot bigger leads over enemy junglers. Now, if you're asking, hey, what should I do if I'm a farming jungler in the situation? Well, as you're seeing the Lee Sin kind of play a bit more aggressively, Rengar's team is actually able to get a bit of a reprieve and take the Herald. It's not enough to take away a full control of the Lee Sin, and Owner will in fact 1v9 this game, and straight up, I'll leave the match history link in the description below. You can see what kind of domination he effected using these four principles. But if you're a farming jungler, a lot of it is the same, but it's also about understanding a bit more your farming tempo for high CSPM. For that, we have Neeko. Now, while Lee Sin got that CSPM up to 6.3 in their previous game, we have to understand that as a farming jungler, Neeko, well, she's not really a farming jungler, but she is a jungler who farms pretty damn quickly, also has a lot of great gank ability. And while here you expect the Lee Sin to start on the top side and go down, he actually went leashless on the blue side and is going up. But from our perspective, then we can just go ahead and affect the lane we want to affect. Understand that the twist is most important. I love getting a leash on the red buff, doing Krugs, Raptors, going the long way through the river, and just having a great ganking angle of approach unexpected by the bot lane because they leashed. Now, once we see that the blue's gone, so we know Lee Sin's going up and doing a full clear, that changes his perspective as well. From our perspective, yeah, we got the successful gank at the bottom lane, but now we can go straight back to base like Lee Sin in the last game to get an itemization spike just to be able to fight and defend our top side, or we can stay out, float up, take the wolf camp, react to action on the map. If there's a trade in the mid lane, people are getting low, stop your clear, dynamically path over. Again, another very important point to understand when it's best to leave your camps and rotate for those 80% plus success rate plays. There's a low Victor, there's a low Jace. Why don't I go ahead and save my Jace and, kill the Victor? From the farming jungler's perspective, if whoever you are here, doesn't really matter, you're doing a full clear up. If you're doing that and you are not able to contest this top scuttle crab, either through numbers, through simple 1v1, you just reset and now try and create some tempo advantage on the bottom side, correct the bottom lane gank by the Neeko, and then of course if the Neeko stays out, you can do the counter jungling just like the Lee Sin showed in the last game. But there's nothing saying as a Hecarim you can't do the blue side quadrant and gank the mid lane. And that's the point. Even if Neeko is technically something that can really do a great full clear, why, when I can get out ahead of the Lee Sin, he's a bit of an unknown factor. Now I've created this tempo advantage for myself. How do I maintain it with the same fundamentals from the previous game? Firstly, please ensure you don't die in these fights, which the Neeko does a good job of doing. Finish up your blue side quadrant, go back to base and spend. The Lee Sin makes a nice gank in the mid lane, knowing the Neeko's gonna have to reset, but instead of going for the Raptors because he could not, he falls back. So as a farming jungler here, from the Neeko's perspective, anyone's perspective, you control your own house. Take the Raptors, take the Krugs. Why? Because we know the Lee Sin ganked the mid lane, will go back to his blue side and maybe look to do something on the bottom lane. If he doesn't and he just simply passes to the top side, we get a free dragon. Did you notice how that was the read, but when it didn't happen, we reacted to the contingency plan? Always know what you want to do when the expected doesn't occur. And if the enemy jungler isn't interested in regaining tempo control, playing aggressively, or doing anything we're talking about in this video, he can farm it up and just lose. Now, unfortunately here, what we do is we rotate and die. What does this mean for your ability to control the enemy jungler? It's not good, because now you're gray screen, he's also gray screen, but he's gonna respawn and be on the map at the same time as you. You both have about the same CS, he has one less KP, sure you have an objective, but it's neutralized the control between us. So how would you regain that control then, huh? Would you go down to the red buff if you're low elo? Please don't do that. We've got Wolves, we've got Grump, we've got Scuttle, we've got Herald, and the Lee Sin also knows he's gonna need to get some of that to make sure he offsets the objective advantage you have. Lee Sin also knows this, so ganks the top lane to grab himself a kill in the Croc, which means without numbers advantage, they could take over the Herald control matrix. or at this particular stage, because he didn't do what I said in the first game, which is track, support, roam timers, Neeko will be able to extrapolate where Lee Sin is going, move into his jungle with the aggressive play, just like in the last game, make that kill. Once you make that kill or you push them out, you can fall back to the objective. You can then fall back to your blue side camps. And for those wondering about that extrapolation, was it difficult? How did you know? Well, the red buff is spawning, a global timer. We see the Lee Sin gang top lane, he's gonna go to his red, and then he's gonna look to leverage that into a herald. Why don't we just, invade and kill him, take all of those things, and now the Lee Sin is feeling desperate like the Rengar did in the last game. I guess I have to force something or wait for you to show up. We now, as the Neeko, have control. Again, he gets desperate, chasing you, kill him, you take his red. He's gonna go to the bottom side here because he knows he needs some free time to catch up with farm. He's gonna try and set up for the dragon. So as Neeko, do you go to the bottom side now? No. First, he has to take care of his camps because I'm in control as the Neeko. So I can take my top side camps, pass down for the dragon fight, and we can do whatever we need to do and then fall back to our red side. They will be safe, those camps. Lee Sin cannot afford to do those before the dragon. Too risky. And if you have a bit of an unknown factor, hey look, I'm taking my blue side, I want to go do the dragon, what's the best thing you can do before an objective when the enemy jungler knows they need this to get back in the game? Make the pick. If someone's out of position and everyone's just kind of handshaking and waiting for the fight when the dragon spawns, don't allow this. I made a Twitter thread about this a few weeks ago talking about objective setup. If someone steps out or if someone isn't ready, just make the pick. You can say, well, look at what Neeko can do. No other, if you're Rengar, you can do this. Yes, you can just ult and kill. If you're Evelyn, they'll have no idea you're there. You could Twitch jungle and make this pick. And then of course you can fall on down, take the turret, and now you have total control for the dragons and more fightings. The experience advantage is in your favor. The CS advantage is in your favor, look at that. And you can see, Neeko isn't quite a farming jungler and it didn't feel like she was farming a lot, but she really was. Strategic, aggressive counter jungling, using the tempo control to do more things to keep that control. Enemy jungler didn't quite make the right moves to offset it, and thus Neeko took over. So hopefully you can see by using quadrant clearing, a few extended sequences here and there, and I'll throw those definitions up on the screen right now. In applying those fundamentals, you can truly maintain control over enemy junglers, and it doesn't matter if you're a ganking jungler or a farming jungler. The right time to move into the enemy jungle to push them off to counter jungle is the same for everybody. If your camps are more important to you as a farming and scaling jungler than say an early game jungler, then you can always fall back to them and just sequence and do them in the right order. Hey look, dragon's on the bottom side, he can't take my bottom side camps, might as well do my top side camps. Hopefully this adds a little aggro to your tempo and your jungle pathing. What if there was a simple jungle framework that also scaled with your rank? You can use it to control the game from low elo to high elo. Why worry about 1,000 jungle decisions every game when you can just focus on 2 at a time? This first example will highlight the overarching problem for every single rank, while showing you how this will also affect those in high elo with 2 high elo examples to follow. Whatever rank you might think this will be, trust me, it represents all of you. The Zax team have invaded. We now see that they leave the situation because a bottom lane had a cheeky look. The Fiddlesticks says, hey, let me start my Raptors as well as my red. Now his clear isn't perfect, he's gonna basically vertical jungle here, fall back to his blue side, and then go down to his red side. The Zac at this particular stage is a big question mark. Well, we know he started on the blue side and went up. You know, the enemy bot lane took a weird path, but as such we thought, hey, maybe he was still leashed. The Fiddlestick sees the red is gone, goes back to the Raptors, goes to the river, and runs into the Zac. We paused, we had a discussion, and this is where the idea for the video was born, because basically after I explained what the Zac was doing, he says, okay, so basically we're looking at what the enemy jungler should be doing versus what he actually ends up doing. And I said, exactly. From his perspective, the Zac started from the bottom side and was sequencing up, so we expected him to be on the top side scuttle. Because we stole his red side and went all the way down, he should have long since taken the top scuttle, shown himself on the map through top and mid, or done something that gives us an idea of what his actual game plan was. In reality, our Fiddlesticks missed a lot of information that compromised his ability to make either decision. Once he shows up, we have total confirmation of absolutely everything that he did. He took our red, he did his blue side, and we know that because he has 16 CS, that's 4 camps. We steal the crab, we chunk him, and now we basically know exactly what we want to do, which is of course, look bottom lane, nothing, okay, I'm gonna do the Krugs and reset. But we can apply the 2 decision jungle rule to the Zac. He's been chunked, he will have to go back to base, he can't stick around and wait for us, so he's gonna either go back to base and go to the top side and take that opposite side scuttle, or he's gonna basically say, you know what, if I was tracking the Fiddlesticks' CS and I see the fact that he has a red buff, I know that my red side is not available. If he doesn't track that kind of stuff, he most likely goes to the top side and then realizes all the camps are gone, and based upon what we do next, we'll make another decision. The fascinating thing about this is the Zac actually went from the red to the blue to his red, not expecting any sort of vertical jungling, expecting the Fiddle to arrive there after starting on the blue side. This is terrible and why I hate these stupid 3 buff studs. You lose sequencing tempo, you lose experience tempo, you waste your time, it takes you off the map. There's just nothing good about what the Zac did. From the Fiddlesticks perspective, All we think is the guy was just really slow, which again is not really that surprising. The problem is our Fiddlesticks wasn't using the 2-decision jungle rule because he wasn't thinking about what the Zac could do and what the Zac should do. So he goes for a lane gank on a pushing wave, and even though he almost does get some kills here, the intent, as he explained, was to maybe counter gank the Zac. But the Zac at 16 TS, no camps on the bottom side, no HP, he has to go back to base, and while we were doing that, ganks in the mid lane. Now, as you from the Fiddlesticks' perspective see this, there are two options for him once more. Once he ganks in the mid lane and paths to the top side, where the Raptors and Krugs will respawn, what do you think could be another decision for the Zac to actually go and do? And it's quite a simple one. Yes, he can go to the Scuttle Crab and say, hey, the Fiddlesticks will be sequencing top to bottom. I've seen a bottom. I'm currently ahead of him. Why don't I take the Scuttle Crab, ward the Grump to track his second sequence, and then gank top lane with maybe the mid laner who is prior, or even just by myself. Doesn't really matter what particular thing happens in your game, that's one decision, the right decision, where the Zac can then use the outside in rule to do that, gank the top lane, take his Krugs and Raptors, and now he's reset that awful beginning and regained control of his jungle. On the other hand, the Fiddlesticks would now be forced to path to the bottom side, and the Zac would know exactly where he's going to be, which is very important. Instead though, we force a fight as the Fiddlesticks, everyone rotates, it's a bit of a fiesta, but the Yorick gets fed, all hail Yorick. Now Zac on the other hand will basically take his blobby life and leave with no passive without taking the Scuttle. So the Fiddlesticks again, what's the 2-decision jungle rule here? The Zac could, in theory, just go down to the Wolves and the Grump and essentially look to gank bottom lane, assuming the Fiddle might come back to the top side, take the Scuttle and sequence down, once more giving the Zac a bit of an advantage, or he could simply reset and then do his camps and do nothing else. Now there could be other decisions you could put here, but it's important that you extrapolate what you think he should do based upon how you understand jungle, and what he might do based upon how he's playing and what MMR you're playing in. With these two things, you kind of have the top tier decision and the lower tier decision, and you can respond accurately. So for example, our Fiddlesticks here goes Raptors, Red, Krugs. Why is this important? Because it will give us that level 6, which allows us to counter gank that Zac. We can also use effigies to scan, resync up and wait for our bottom lane, and then go all in with that crucial ultimate that we should have predetermined if we want to use on the bottom lane. Instead though, as you can see, he wasn't using this rule because he skips the Krugs, doesn't get level 6, and just runs at the Zac's blue. Now in the most silver image of all time, the Zac's doing his Grump while the Fiddle does his blue, and then runs away. And because we saw the Zac having 25 CS the last time we saw him, that's 16 plus Raptors plus Krugs plus a minion, we know now when we see him again that he has done Wolves and Grump as well. But there was no reason to check the dragon, there was no reason to use the effigy on the dragon, there was no possibility that the Zac was gonna solo the dragon level 4 with his bottom lane pushed in, and you having no vision anyway means you could never contest it. And thus there's no point even going there, because with our 2-decision jungle rule, we didn't put that as one of the possible decisions. If this was say a full HP Shyvana or a Vi and they left a situation on the top side at level 5, and you knew they would possibly go for this nice cheeky dragon and cut the map to do so, cool, but what are you gonna do about it now anyway? Nothing, so we might as well do our quadrant, let them go back to the blue side afterwards, reset and go and maybe use our ultimate on the top of the mid lane such that we can take that Herald. You can also obviously react to a gank in the bottom lane or use your ult in the bottom lane, that's cool as well. Let's jump into a Master's tier game to show you where you can also use this as well. Now in this one we have a Master tier Nocturne versus Master tier Rel. Around 500 LP, and you know how in low elo coachings and low elo videos, hey guys, you should always focus on your clears, get the practice in, make sure you're getting it right. Yeah, because look, it still happens. But when it happens in Master tier with this reset on the Raptors that was unfortunately seen by the Malphite, which again should have been seen by the Nocturne because we see the Malphite move up and ward, is you get unholy punished for it. Now the Rel in theory should do a 3-camp gank as we saw in the gameplay channel with that video the other day. However, she can also decide to flex into a full clear, so if you know she started topside, you know she's going down, Raptor start is also possible for the Rel and probably should be what she uses. However, she sees the dive potential and decides, look, Nocturne's coming down most likely, I better do this dive and protect against a sort of gank, which is why she's here. The Nocturne has his reset, isn't thinking about these things, and is only focused on his full clear. Which you think was a better play here? And again, the 2-decision jungle rule is about how you think about the enemy jungler and then make a better decision based upon that information that they give you. I expect Rel to 3-camp gank, but she didn't, so I guess she's gonna full clear, but she could go for this dive because it's pushing in quite heavily and Jinx is low. I guess I'll just farm. That's not how you respond to that. And now you should ask, okay, what's the Rel gonna do next? She could most likely, based upon the CS that I've seen, go do the Scuttle Crab, get 20, Blue will be 24, Grump will be 28. I have Gwen pushing in on the top side, shitting on my Vladimir. Maybe I should just go back to base after the Krugs here, sacrifice my bottom lane, do that top side Scuttle to deny it from the Rel, and if she decides to repeat gank bottom lane, as a lot of junglers of this type will, then I get to counter jungle who's second spawn Raptors and Krugs. Alternatively, she could just take the bottom side Scuttle, cross mid lane, and take the top side Scuttle. which is what the Nocturne seemingly thinks is going to happen, which is just stupid because it's a low elo move. However, by doing this, we do get the crab, we get to ward her Raptors, and we get a coincidentally beautiful gank on the mid lane. A nice pre-6 gank against the Malphite. See, the fundamentals we talk about in low elo, mid MMR, especially in the courses I released, talk about these building fundamentals over time as you climb through the ranks. They will always carry over. It's an accumulation of skills. You don't lose any of them, you just use all of them. So while his focus on the crab and the tracking of the rel was incorrect, he still used good knowledge to basically make a good play. Now we can reset and of course come out of base again and go to the top side. From Rel's perspective, she sees this, she knows this, she understands this. So instead of going back to base, she says, hey, I better gank that Zed before level 6 as well. Hello, I can E to empower my Q, which stuns you, and then I can knock you up, and of course you get the percentage max HP damage before I go on my very way and take these second spawn Raptors and these second spawn Krugs, and ideally here I will go back to base. But what's Nocturne gonna do? Most likely go out of base and do the Gromp Wolves and go down, but there is a possibility he could look to do something about top side here. Let me just go for the gank myself. Obviously you can scan and whatnot and try and snowball my grind even further. If he shows up, I've got it covered, and then afterwards I can go back to base. Definitely a long time to stay out, but the Rella's made the right decisions all the way. Now from the Nocturne's perspective, when you see her go to the mid lane, no back, 28 CS, you know her Raptors and Krugs are up, you know she's gonna go Raptors, Krugs, and most likely now gank the top side or go back to base. Two decisions. If she does go back to base, then I know I can sequence down, get ahead of her at the bottom lane, and take away that ganking path. If she goes to the top lane, then I can, guess what? Go counter jungling. All the while, the Rel actually cancels her base, stays, and gets another kill for the Gwen, snowballing that lane. This in turn forces the Nocturne to make a bit of a dumb decision with his ultimate, because you also ganked mid lane again. He now feels this pressure, knowing you're most likely gonna go and deal with your red, maybe take a Herald, so he goes and dies while tower diving Illusion and Amelia. So you can see, basically seeing where enemy junglers show and what they do and what kind of plays are available, there's very often, hey, they can do this or they can do this. And the first option is something that really what they should be doing in your mind, and the other one is the B option, and you never know which one they're exactly gonna take, but you're thinking about it, which means you in your mind are also thinking about the counterplays to these things, and you will never be surprised by randomness. You will never be surprised by the inability to take control of games because you're thinking and getting in the enemy jungler's head. And that's what separates the challengers from the non-challengers, or in this case, the emeralds, I suppose. And of course, this process keeps going back and forth throughout the early game until you get to that mid-game transition. But obviously, as you're seeing, it's most potent in this early game as the Nocturne's still dying, he's doing the Herald, she's doing the Dragon, she ends up ganking this and that, he ends up pushing the whole top side, we end up pushing the whole bottom side. There's multiple ways to play the game. Not every decision is categorically right or wrong, and sometimes there's two correct decisions and you just have to think about which one they may take so that you can be ready to react when they do. However, sometimes and most times people make terrible decisions. Let's look at this other Master Tier game, Bel'Veth, full clearing up, Jarvan, full clearing down. A lot of you will value the troll here, but we have a Viego ADC. Now, should this bother you? No. What can you do to carry the game? Probably not gank that lane. I'm not really interested in snowballing that kind of bottom lane. I would love an Aurelion Soul to kind of float around and scale nice and easy. I would like to get the Poppy fed so that she can deal with Tryndamere pretty well. And I just want to make sure that I'm strong so that I can be the hyper carry with my Lulu. At least that's what I'm thinking if I'm the Bel'Veth. Unfortunately, this is someone else and they decide, hey, I should go back to base after I do these Krugs. You know why? Because Jarvan, he's gonna dive my melee bot lane. Oh yeah, of course, they picked a melee bot lane and it's Jarvan. He's gonna full clear, take your scuttle, and dive your bot lane. Hey, look at top wave, look at that wave. Oof. Any top laners in the chat, in the comments, what do you think your jungler should be doing here? Level 3 Tryndamere, Poppy damage. Oh my goodness, she goes for the trade. But where's our Bel'Veth? Thinking too much about the Jarvan's option instead of about her option. So you've got to know when to balance the decision matrix. I expect Jarvan to do either full clear dive bot lane nice, or full clear take the Scuttle Crab cross mid lane and take the other Scuttle Crab. If I know, and I should, that the Tryndamere water try, then I should go the other way, take the Scuttle, go into the jungle, and then dive him. This means if the Jarvan doesn't dive my bottom lane, he will, and I get the Scuttle Crab and dive his top laner. If he doesn't dive, then basically I'm safe because he's lost all control. I've taken away his top lane. I can now go back to base and then go straight to the bottom lane, gank it fresh, and then resequence and gank Poppy again. But now instead she chose to cut the Jarvan off with an item base, which is great if you can beat him. But if you still can't beat him even though you have 2 longswords, you probably should know that about your matchup and also look to avoid him. Based on using the 2 decision jungle rule, you should not be in this situation wasting time because now the Jarvan gets to take the top scuttle. Now the Jarvan gets to push out the way for his Tryndamere. Now the Jarvan gets to steal your Raptors before going back to base. And now he can go, right, the Bel'Veth knows I was up here, the Bel'Veth knows I most likely took away her raptors, the Bel'Veth knows I'm in control, so I think she should go to the bottom side here as there's a dragon up, her camps are respawning, the bottom lane's there, I can basically look to do other things instead, or I can match her. Likewise, there's only a Krug camp here, so I don't expect her to take it. But I guess if she's bad, she could look to do that and offset top lane. And guess what? In Silver, you might actually have someone literally do that. Go out of base, take the Krugs, not recognize the Raptors were gone, waste time ganking top lane. And as a Java, when that does happen, guess what? Free gank spot, free dragon, free counter jungling. Her bad decision, based upon your 2-decision jungle rule, rewards you. If she does what you expect, you're ready to handle it and deal with it. So in all your games this week and for the foreseeable future, please start to think about what the enemy jungler wants to do in terms of the theoretically correct choice that you would make versus, maybe they might do this as well. And sometimes those 2 decisions will be one great, one dumb, and sometimes there'll be 2 great decisions and you just have to acknowledge that you are ready to handle whichever one they take. And if they do the one that's unexpected, like, you know, say steal your red, do your blue side, and then gank the bottom wave while you go back to base's fiddle and go back top side, that's not your fault. You can't help the fact that the Zac would have done that. You can't help the fact that your bottom lane might have actually died to it. But what that would mean is you can actually go ahead and steal his Raptors and Krugs again. So you always have to look for that outlet to their bad decision, but if they make the right decision, you're right in spot to carry the game. What if I told you that you queued up to carry a game, but then you had a level 1 Fiesta that resulted in the enemy ADC Zyra being 3 kills up? And then you had to use everything you know about the jungle in order to carry step by step the early, mid, and late game, and then you'd have to put on the absolute most monster performance to actually carry the game. But how? And as in a perfect jungle game that showcases the complete skill set that you need to thrive and climb in Season 13 and beyond. So if you want an S+ or MVP every single game you play, follow this video step by step and it will showcase all you need to know. But if you want to cover every possibility in the jungle and really become a better jungler to leave your MMR, the courses on Virkayu.gg are the solution. Everything you need within a few hours, no combing of information necessary, simply fast climbing, fast knowledge. Why wait to reach your peak when you can just do it in the next couple of weeks with all the knowledge through one weekend? Not to mention we have copious success stories on the website as well as one-on-one coaching, a coaching VOD library, and a free jungle improvement PDF. So yes, both junglers are compromised, and yes, the Evelyn is going Conqueror. That is a side point to this video. Sometimes there's just a rune that certain players synergize with much better than others. It is not better than Electrocute on a de facto basis. It is not better than First Strike on a de facto basis. However, you will see later in the mid game there's a big fight and the Evelyn has 43 extra AP to use on her Qs, on her Rs, and on her Es. Well, basically, yeah, all her spells. But as you saw that level 1 transpire, the Evelyn leaves the base, and yes, both junglers are compromised for their 4 clears. So the Evelyn does the classic, Raptors, red, Krugs. This gives level 3 and the opportunity to gank on the bottom lane. The Graves goes for the red Raptors, knowing that Evelyn most likely will have to go leashless, and when that's the case, you often go Raptors. So you could look to flex a variety of clears, you know, Raptors, Krugs, red into the top side, keep your full sequence going, but when you have a 3-kill Zyra at level 1, level 2, level 3, you should probably do something about that, especially when she has no flash. And this is already where the knowledge comes in, okay? So we're focusing on the early game now, then the mid game, then the late game, but it starts off with segmenting your map into quadrants and understanding what your goal is. We knew the Graves would be behind on tempo just because of the respawn timers, but we also knew we had to get the shutdown on Zyra no matter what, just to try and curtail her influence. Following this, because we've got control of our red side quadrant, the Graves ganks mid and goes to his bottom side quadrant. Now we're doing what we want to do, opposite of the map to the enemy jungler. This allows us to do the blue into the Scuttle Crab. We use this pressure to try gank top lane. Graves uses his blue side basically to try and gank mid lane. He succeeds. Now he can move on down because he knows the Evelyn, because of the respawn timers, wouldn't have been so delayed after 1 minute 30 to start her Raptors. That means a very stereotypical timers will work in his favor. Maybe a couple seconds delayed, but that 3 minute 55-ish second spawn of the Raptors will work, following that into the Krug respawn timer that she would have taken after the red. Now the Evelyn goes looking, because she knows that's what the Grave is doing, to take his Raptors, but obviously his are significantly more delayed. And so we basically say, well, I'll ward, repeat gank top lane, and grab that kill for myself. Now, as Evelyn will kill the Cassandra in the top lane, we know we saw the Graves go mid lane first with 8 CS. He then pathed downwards and shows back up with 20. By the simple logical extrapolation of pathing and timing, he did blue grump into the Scuttle Crab back to the mid lane. We now see him go down. He shows bottom lane with 20 CS before he then goes back into our jungle, so most likely now he's doing our Krugs. So the Evelyn makes a pathing error, which is not really something you talk a lot about in this elo, but at the same time it does happen. We had 2 options after the gank on the top side. scan to clear any potential vision, which is great. She does this, but if I told you, hey, the guy shows up with 20, Rhys shows up bottom lane with 20 still, and then floats back into our jungle, we know the timers of our Raptors and Krugs. We know that the Krugs and Raptors are both available. Given his pathing, that means he's most likely taking our Krugs and looking at the bottom lane for a potential dive. We can see this because it's our team. Thus, now after ganking the top lane, we can scan and move straight to do his tier 1 Krugs. We also have the timer on the Raptors at this point because we know HCS Red plus Raptors, so we can probably snack those as well and then fall back into our blue side. The other alternative is, yes, scan on the way down, clear the vision. We see the Graves again, we know he's down on the Krugs. Let's go ahead and take his Raptors first, look mid lane, and then fall back to the blue side. She doesn't extrapolate this, clears the ward with the intent to go to the Gromp, and then we have visual confirmation of the Graves showing up after taking our Krugs. Okay, we'll quickly flex and steal some Raptors, look mid lane, nothing. Okay, then we can go to the Gromp on the Wolves. Yes, this isn't ideal, but when you're farming jungler and you've kind of split the map vertically just a little bit, you basically have to understand, look, I can take a few things, he's gonna take a few things, I need to impact what I can. All of this, the whole summary of the early game when you have unfortunate events that put you in a gold deficit with fed laners, is patience. Patience and control your own econ. Now to this stage you have a pretty good idea they're on the dragon thanks to your bottom lane kind of showcasing this, and while this isn't the sort of flow we're looking for in terms of early game, sequencing and farming and taking control of the game as a farming or scaling jungler, the best thing you can do is take what you can, and if what you can take denies him while he's doing the dragon, then we'll use that. Now the Cassandra did a superb job, moving on down, deep warding her jungle, great against an Evelynn, warding the middle pixel bush, so even though the Evelynn has a scanner, she wasn't entirely sure of where wards were, decides to cross the river and go steal the Krugs as well. The Cassandra shows up, but we'll go back to base now. Not the most efficient use of time, but at least it was something. And that's very important because we always talk about efficiency on this channel and making sure that we're sequencing and you're doing all of these things perfectly and correctly, but sometimes you just have to adapt to what the game gives you. Now here's where things get a little bit interesting, but still you're kind of just focusing on shutting people down and getting whatever econ you can. The Graves is a foolish move and tries to steal your red. Where else would you be going at this time? He's pushed out, we're able to snack that, get level 6. We try float bot lane, we try float for gangs. The Graves now 99% is going to go and take that Herald, knowing your bottom side, knowing that you and him have now swapped sides of the map. Of course, he's now on the top side, you're on the bottom side, which does give you time to work. This is always the benefit of this kind of jungling when you're behind and you're not able to really stop the enemy jungler just yet. Hold on though, we're getting there. You basically make sure you're falling back to your camps, moving back into the rivers, capitalizing on kills you can get, and showcasing a bit of patience in those side lane ganks. And yes, at this particular point in the early game, you know Graves is top side. You would love to sequence up and control things and deny him the ability to take the Herald. You want to protect your top laner. When you trail and follow and do that kind of stuff, you're letting him control the game, you are playing his game, and you'll never win. In this particular case, you know by him doing that, he's giving you a lot of windows to offset the lead he gave his bottom lane. So Graves takes a Herald, he takes some stuff on the top side, you kill his bottom lane a few times, you dive them, you take his blue and his Gromp. Basically, again, hand-checking equal and opposite, which is perfect. Because if you're not taking the things away from him, whatever he gets, you're at least trying to go as equal as possible. Now, of course, full plate stack, trying to snowball the Cassandra into the Rengar, taking the first turret. You cannot always compete with these game state elevations, but what can we now do at this particular stage of the game? It's 11-12 minutes. Normally, there's a lot more to talk about in the early game, but in this case, it was really, look, I'm going to take top side, you take bottom side, and now we swap. You go take the Herald, you kill my top lane, I kill your bottom lane. How great. But at some point, it has to end. The most important thing is the Evelynn was controlling a lot of things. And now, of course, our red side quadrant is respawning, the dragon is available, the Graves will be going to the bottom side. Enough is enough. Now you swap, now you go and compete, and now you start to fight. Now you look for those picks, now you don't allow vertical anymore, we're done. Right, here we go. So I'm giving you the dragon, I'm gonna go Krugs into Raptors. This stops the possibility for any sort of vertical counter jungling at this time. We also know that we can go and gank mid lane with our ult, with the Yone, and with our camouflage. We do exactly that as well. Pulling out the abilities, pulling out the maximum kills, and then leveraging that into a counter jungling opportunity. Your Raptors, my Raptors. Graves has to hold mid lane, we can take an RNG Scuttle, already boosting itself up to that Krug value of experience and gold. Yeah, that's right. People, you shouldn't ignore the Scuttle Crab in the river. You should take those things. Pull back to the blue side, go back to base. Now we've got a Mesh Eyes, Rocket Belt, a needlessly large rod. We got a Sork Boots, or a pair of Sork Boots, I should say. And the Graves again shows bottom lane, takes another turret. What's the most fundamental step and the second part of the early game into this mid-game transition when you're in this scenario? Bend, but do not break. Swoop, but do not overcommit. Make sure you're controlling your jungle, your quadrant clearing as best you can. You are looking for picks on targets that you can very easily snack away and ensure you have numbers advantage on any subsequent play necessary, because we cannot afford to keep giving up dragons and heralds and eventually win. At some point, giving up 2 dragons and a herald, which is quite normal in these kinds of situations, that's fine, but that's the limit. And again, we look to loop that control. Kill, scuttle, herald, blue side quadrant. Now what's next? We're making sure that we are always taking whatever we can where the graves isn't, and then falling back to control what's ours. Now as you go back to base here, you pick up another needlessly large rod. You have a control ward. You know that you have no tier 1s in the side lanes, and you have a tier 1 in the mid lane. You have no turrets of your own at all, and you're the only one that's remotely fed. That means you know the enemy team is going to try and group up and punch down your mid tier 1 to look to, control the next dragon, souls, barons, and win the game easily. You cannot allow this. Everything we've done so far in this game is to give us the opportunity to make the right play in this moment, which means if you're Rengar, Evelynn, Assassins, Qiyana, it doesn't really matter, we're looking to flank, take out a priority target, and ensure we have numbers advantage for the subsequent fight. Obviously, we have to wait for our team, and if our team don't really show up, then guess what you can do? This is the macro call. You can shove that mid lane, and if you really have to give up that 3rd dragon, I don't really want to, but it's better than dying and losing the game. You can just push that turret yourself, push the next wave up, do some counter jungling, catch and push out the top wave a bit, just keep getting yourself fed. However, if you have the herald, drop it, force the shove there, which means it does give you the position to maybe make a better pick and then fall back to the dragon. As we did here, the Varus also gets to push out the bottom lane because of this. The enemy team with the lead will not allow this, so as always, I like to talk about jungle theory. I like to tell you what you can do in different scenarios. That's what each video is about. Not every video is the same. There's different things we need to talk about, triggers and power things. However, eventually, if you're fed or not fed, your mechanics will be necessary. There's gonna be a fight. You have to know your abilities, you have to know your damage output, and you have to play it well. If you die, you could lose the game. That's what this kind of game is. The step-by-step process to perfect jungling and to basically making sure you win the game only works if you're able to actually make the right plays. But what you don't want to do is overchase and commit, which we don't do when we go back to base. Look at the difference. We now have Rocket Belt, Death Cap, and 25 Giga Stags. What next now to actually take this game over the finish line, even though most of the gold lead that we have in this game is on us, which means our team without us are not as useful as you might think they are. And I talk about this all the time in the mid and the late game. If you leave the base now and you go, say, Raptors into your Wolves into your Grump, and you path away from your team, you're screwing over the game. Path to your Grump, Wolves, Raptors, you could do red maybe, but the point is you're pathing in such a way that you can react to something or loop back to something quickly, like, killing the Graves and making the pick. Then Yone splitting on the bottom side, they decide to totally overcommit to kill him. The difference between a challenger jungler, diamond jungler, gold jungler, and low elo jungler is the ability to make the quick shot call. In this case, hey, quick, let's go, Baron, now. But it's only 21 minutes. Well, the Baron isn't really that difficult to take, let's go. And if you can make these shot calls as the jungler, trust me, solo queue does work. You just ping, say, look, let's go, this guy's bottom lane. They're chasing our Yone, quickly. More often than not in most elos, and again, I coach and made a lot of courses, I watched so many VODs. I basically recorded 80 videos worth of content for these courses. Yeah, that's not a joke, it's literally what it is in terms of time. And I've seen it at every single MMR. Yes, it's less likely to happen in silver, but if you do it and they follow, free win. Platinum, it's definitely where things start to happen. In diamond, if you miss this, you really do risk the possibility of losing. And my friends, you go back to base thinking, wow, what a cool call, I'm so amazing. Let me go do some camps. Team! Rengar's top lane, yes to base, why are you fighting? Team! And what are you gonna do? Watch them die and then split push your Evelynn. Now you could do, but if you're fed enough and truly juiced enough, let's go. You have to be the last man standing. You have to play perfectly. You have to understand your champion's output. There is no shortcut, I'm sorry. There is no get-rich-quick scheme. It is knowing your output, knowing your champion's limitations, and playing around it perfectly as you anticipate what the enemy champions are going to do or try to do to you. Now, if you're Bel'Veth with Void Fishies, we could go mid lane, we could go top lane, we could just really shove and create pressure that way. That is one way to do things. But in low elo, mid MMRs, sometimes it's better just to involve yourself, the level 16 self you are, and get all the kills. Screw your team. They set them up for you, you knock them down. And now you can fully employ the swoop method, which you could bring it in sooner, when you haven't taken that mid tier 1. But effectively, this is saying, go from side to side, control the rivers, get into their jungle, make a pick. Now swoop back, shadow your team while they do the pushing. Is there someone other side? Kill them as well. Push this wave, push that wave, take their camps. You're living in the river into their jungle zone, and they can never set up a team fight because you're trapping. I do this as Zyra, you could do this as Nidalee, you could do this as any assassin obviously. Sure, you might be a tank and maybe you don't exactly have this power, but if you're Sejuani, there's no reason why you can't trap on a bush, hit the CC, and your team can follow up, hopefully. The point is, this level of control is not champion specific, it's not class specific, it's a playstyle, it's a way of life. It's a, I'm going to win this game because you are never getting stuff for free again. And how unassuming was it? Because we just kind of said to the Graves, look, take some dragons, take my top side, I'll take your bot side, take my bot side, I'll take your top side. You reacted to the information quickly, we offset some of the leads that he put through, and yes, we have to go Zhonya's this game as Evelyn because we're going Conqueror. Long fights, lots of healing, lots of extra AP stacks and damage. This isn't your regular one-shot and get out. We are definitely using our Q to stick around as long as possible. We're also the only realistic damage threat, and if they kill us, we probably lose, which is what you guys always tell me, right? So this is a good example. Now, fortunately, the Evelyn does employ these principles. We make a few picks and we shove up an inhib. However, and unfortunately, as is the way even in high elo, hey guys, we can end. Hey guys, we did not watch the death respawn timers, the fact that there was a Baron up, and you know, you die, your team dies, everyone dies, you cry a little bit, they get a Baron, and now you're going, oh no, now I have to prolong this game by 10 minutes. This is what I'm talking about. If you can leave, let your team die. If you can leave, take some camps, push a wave, threaten a potential steal, maybe even get it. Maybe you just have to give it, but you can take all of your camps, all of their camps. You can push another wave somewhere else. There's always pressure release, okay? So that's what you're trying to keep in mind here. Always look for the pressure release, even in the down moments of this particular game phase. And now your team are like, well, we might as well just 1-3-1 because I'm Rengar, I can go top side, Yona can go bottom side. The red team says, well, if you're going to 1-3-1, how do you counter that? With a hardcore engage, but fortunately, Evelyn has now taken out the Rakan, so one little numbers advantage for us. We can then join up with our Yona and start to hit this one to get the bottom inhib because we still have the middle inhib down. And with this sort of pressure, as long as you can leave and escape, maybe loop back around for another pick, get your final itemization, get a nice elixir for your juice, you now have enough pressure just to place yourself in positions to get picks. Don't worry too much about farming, shove the map up, look for someone out of position, pull the trigger, kill them. Keep repeating that process 1 or 2 minutes more, and with those inhibs down, you'll very easily have that super minion pressure, which of course you just have to play behind, but someone on the enemy team will always get impatient, will always step out where they shouldn't, will detach from someone else, and that's where you, the assassin, make the pick. That's where Evelyn is strong, Rengar is strong, Talon is strong, but if you're playing another class of champion, don't step out and die trying to be an assassin, but you can push the waves together, you can shadow with your team. If you're playing a death ball comp, just move on up together, push the top side inhib. The principles are the same. Look to make a pick, leverage that numbers advantage, wait for the minions to push in, complete the job. And as you can see with 23 kills, this was a methodical, equally spaced, dominating 1v9 performance. Early game wasn't very great, wasn't dynamic, we just had to get what we could. That's it, end of story. But we made the tempo play early, which basically gave us a little bit of an advantage over the Graves. You then go ahead, and as long as you're getting something while he's getting something, that's okay. Until you get to that end of the early game phase into the mid game, alright, no more. I'm fed, you're fed, let's make the play. And that's when the game started to get busted open because of the Evelyn's patience in teamfights, in ganks, in farming, in counter jungling, just sitting back, watching, observing. This was an exquisite example of someone understanding their champion, as well as the jungle, while making one little bit of a mistake in giving up that Baron for the reverse, but they never gave it pressure or control. Now, if you want to fill in some of these gaps with the most important jungling commandments, that is linked on the top right of your screen now, but if you want to fill in the gaps at a different level, to know everything you ever needed to know for your MMR, the Virkayu to GG courses will set you on your path. And this early game might not be as dynamic as others that we've discussed because of the nature of the gold lead and the swing from level 1, but it's very important for you to understand that this principle works ahead or behind. Whether you happen to be a farming or a ganking jungler, you have dealt with lack of rotations, enemy jungler invades, you've dealt with mid laners roaming like this Akshan will in this game, and whether you are 3-camp ganking or full clearing, there is one enemy of all junglers. And to defeat it quickly and thus climb quickly, we need to look at how challenger junglers deal with these particular situations and how that always positions themselves to be able to win, and of course if they don't use it, to throw. Now in the game I obviously have for you today, it is a challenger game to showcase to you as the Kha'Zix, what do you do when you're faced with negative lane prio? What do you do when things just don't work out the way your game plan might have wanted to? Likewise, if you're the Echo, how do you capitalize on this map pressure and put yourself in a position to carry? Now I can categorically tell you that none of this will happen, and that is the whole point of this video. So, the Kha'Zix are starting on the blue, going down. We see a late ward by the Ahri showcasing the Echo starting on Raptors solo. We also see the Akshan move down toward the Raptors because he has prio. This means everything is still going okay. We knock it off the mid prio, but we want to path down. Echo's doing the same thing. The Kha'Zix of course sticks close to the wall and then goes to his red buff, skipping the Raptors to give any sort of concrete information away to the enemy team. The Echo obviously also full clears a little bit faster, so that's something you have to factor in as well. Now this is where a lot of things begin to unravel and things go wrong. It's not always our fault, but you can always go back in time to see the impact. Now this isn't entirely our fault as Akshan's Q gives vision, and the wave isn't crashing that badly, and we didn't use our bracketed pathing to avoid the vision. We walk straight, we get detected, and now the bottom lane, instead of having to use their 2 combined IQ points, can just basically go, oh look, I saw Kha'Zix, I'm going toward the river, which our Kha'Zix should see as well. I mentioned it a few videos ago talking about how to control tempo through your clear and adapting to these things, and it was a Vi who cut out the wolf camp to make sure she could counter-gank a Hecarim. Likewise here, we're not exactly going to be counter-ganking an Echo, but we do want to create some sense of prior such that we take away his options on the bottom side. So fortunately, our bottom lane does the good things. Our Aphelios gets a kill, Zyra gets a kill, and then we go into the river thinking, hey, it's about time for Scuttle Crab, except it's 320. So the Kha'Zix skips his Raptors just so we can have clear tempo advantage over the Echo to use it to gank the bottom lane, but the bottom lane did their own job. So now we can move on up and maybe ward or contest that Grump against the Echo. Obviously, the Rakan will arrive first, and the Akshan has pressure in the mid lane. So much like my trip the other day where I went to get a milkshake and I was told, no, the milkshake machines don't work. I said, I want strawberry. They said, we don't have. I said, what about chocolate? They said, none of them work. I had to accept that and leave. There was no way I was getting a milkshake that day. Likewise, there was no way this Kha'Zix was getting a scuttle over here on this day. The problem is because of his lazy pathing on the mid lane, and then of course him showing on the ward that he should have seen in the first place, he has now given away his exact clear. We know he did not do those Raptors. And so the Echo says, well, Aphelios is going back to base, Zyra is going back to base, the roaming supports are the only thing on the map, why don't I go ahead and try and steal those away? Which of course he does, as you can see, but unfortunately he dies. Unfortunately so does Kha'Zix, and unfortunately the Akshan has a great mechanic that revives his teammates. How fun and engaging. And now we're back to the milkshake. We have to accept that this is just a reality. Normally we'd be coming out of the base at the same damn time. We could both look to use the outside in rule to get that Scuttle Crab, but then assess, of course, the next options. Now, I know you're thinking about what's going to happen here, but remember, this is still a high elo game, but some people still have really heinous pathing. They're great mechanically, they're good at certain things, but their early game pathing, the thing I kind of focus on, they're not so great at. For example, he got detected already, now he respawns, he doesn't think about the outside in rule and going ahead to take that Scuttle Crab and then fall back to his camps. No, he says, I want to kill the Alawi, who is against a level 5 Malphite, who has no CC, and it's an Alawi. And in doing so, walks straight by the Echo and basically doesn't even realize that the Echo was right next to him. This is the weirdest auto pathing you will find in a challenger game. But the point more so is, even if you are the jungler who thinks your team are letting you down, like the Akshan now is going to invade with the Echo onto our Grump, we can't do anything about this. It is our fault for showing not once, but twice, and now 3 times, lazily, and in a way we could have avoided. We could have simply reversed from the Krugs back up to the Raptors, and then gone to the other side Scuttle, and maybe even counter-jungled those 355 Raptors that would respawn because the Echo would be investing down on the bottom side. We would maximize our own experience, but we're worried about the Echo ganking the bottom lane. So you kind of understand why he did what he did, but in the end now, he has to accept that his Grump is just gone. The Echo made a play. He was obviously given the position of the Kha'Zix by the Kha'Zix himself. Akshan shows up to rotate. The worst thing you can do here is ping your RA to rotate. The worst thing you can do here is die. The best thing you can do is simply say, stay there, Ari, stay mid lane, shove it, get some plates, deny some minions. I will give up the Grump, I can take my wolves, and then I can make the next best play. In this case, Ari uses that prior to go roam to the bottom side. This is perfect. So what we can do is hold, absorb, and now we can go down and we have our Raptors, we have our Krugs. Remember, yes, we can deal with this as a farming jungler, but also this is still a ganking jungler idea. You don't necessarily now go sit in the bush with 12 CS for the next 10 minutes. You still have to control your camps, you're still playing the jungle 1v1 mind games, the Batman vs Superman, and you still have to incorporate the lanes into your ideology, into how you want to affect results. And that is obviously going to be winning in jungle diff. And maybe this weekend by milkshake. Now interestingly, the Echo obviously took the Grump, fell back to his Raptors, didn't go up to the Krugs. Why? The same thing we spoke about in the Bel'Veth video a few weeks ago. I need to cut out the Krug so that I can maintain mirror tempo versus Kha'Zix, who's going to be doing the same thing. I already denied him, now I need to make sure I shadow him. But the junglers both know that this is what they're going to be doing. Kha'Zix knows that the Echo is going to be down here. The Echo knows that Kha'Zix is going to be down here, and both of them are instigating the patience game. They are saying, right, I know you're here. Where are you, you son of a bitch? When it's evident that the gank is not going to happen, very clearly you should stay longer, right? Or you should go back to base and then run for the dragon, right? No, mes petits chéris. No, we go to the top side. Why? Because we have an RNG scuttle. We have a herald that's going to be spawning. The Echo has his red buff that's spawning too. We are sequencing top to bottom, both junglers equally. And when you're facing these sorts of things, right? We couldn't do the bottom scuttle. We got seen. We lost our Gromp. There's no gank we can go for the lanes, the Akshan threat. It just is too much. The offset pressure that we're creating is allowing the Ahri to rotate and make impact. Will your Ahri do this? Probably not. Doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter at all, because obviously we want to go ahead and do this herald. So we will take our blue. We know the Echo is going to try and go for it. Now we sit, we scout, and we exert patience. The Echo is kind of forcing this a little bit. Now, I don't necessarily mean in the case that he can't sneak it away. He can. The Aksha can run interference. The Echo can pull it to the back of the pit. He can make sure it gets low, smite it, and snag it. But he doesn't have smite. And the Kha'Zix shows up and he doesn't know if the Kha'Zix has smite. So now there's a threat of a loss of a 50-50. So the Akshan runs interference, but the Ahri has TP, so she can rotate very quickly. The Malphite also has absolutely nothing to lose because he's pushed in, and people think, hey, Alawi has prio. No, Alawi would have to walk around the whole top side, move on down, and lose a lot of pressure and play pressure. The Malphite's being fisted anyway. He might as well just leave. He doesn't give a shit. He'll ult and get some kills. You also have to assess that your mid laner, despite trying to play around you, has not really gotten anything because the Kha'Zix has played this quite well, again, apart from his absolutely abysmal lazy pathing. And yes, he's lost out a bit in his sequencing, but if you're a ganking jungler, a fisting jungler, a skirmishing jungler, basically any jungler here, can we fight this 2v2 and leverage our 3v2 advantage? Yes. We do that, we push him off, we force the flashes, we get a free herald. The Echo should not have done this without a smite. He could have very easily looked to do the whole red side quadrant. Could he have tried to help mid lane in any capacity? Could him and the Akshan basically say, look, Ahri's fed, she's not looking to rotate, she's just gonna go bot lane. Can we then shove the Kha'Zix out of his blue side and maybe fall back to herald afterwards? All of these options are possibilities, but the Kha'Zix is playing a measured, relaxed game. We know the Echo's gonna try use his bottom lane prio and small lead to go ahead and take this dragon. However, the Akshan is mid lane, Ahri is the fed one. Overall, I'm not actually a fan of this contest. I would prefer you accept this, control your red side, and look to float for the counter gank and herald usage around mid or bottom lane. However, if you can mechanically use your advantage, your mythic, to push off the mid laner and then collapse on the 3v2 that your bottom lane is stuck in, you should still be able to come out ahead with 3 kills for 1, which is what happens because we now use our mechanical ability, our gold advantage, and our mid lane prio to create this opportunity. In the worst case scenario, again, yes, you have to accept it, you have to leave, you can't do it, it is what it is. But as long as you say giving up a dragon for CS, for 12 CS of your red side quadrant, plus potentially even more plates somewhere else, you're equalizing it and maybe even coming out ahead. So it doesn't really matter that you're down 20 CS versus enemy jungler, because while you did the herald, he farmed, and now when he does a dragon, you farm. Or if you fight a skirmisher and you're fed, you do what the Kha'Zix did. But no, I can't fight the McDonald's for my milkshake. Now we have a bit of a switcheroo on the map because Echo realizes, alright, look, this isn't exactly going according to plan for me, but we know we're doing okay. Instead of going top to bottom again, I'm going to swap and just go straight to the bottom lane before the Kha'Zix is able to reset and move on down himself. Kha'Zix also wants to use a herald mid lane to really punch and snowball the Ahri and himself, gets seen on a ward, but we see the Echo on our bottom lane, who just happened to be the wards for the blue team. And because we were positioned well, and again, I always say this, if you path well, if you make the best decision you can in the moment and adhere to good pathing practices, usually you will find yourself in the right place at the right time at some point, which in this case is, of course, more bottom lane kills. We then go to the mid lane to snowball the Ahri even more. We want to use this advantage. There will always be a way to make the game 2v8. There will always be a way to make it so that you can have someone to play around, especially in Diamond, especially in Platinum, but it can very much be true for Gold and low elo as well. You just have to try and see who's the strongest player on your team, who is someone you can snowball with Herald Blades. When they go bottom lane, even if you wanted your mid laner to come top side, if they go bottom lane and get fed, what can you do to further your cause as well, so together you're both strong? And obviously we always need to limit test, and of course both junglers are doing solidly in terms of their gold amounts, obviously in different ways, and yeah, Kha'Zix loses this one. As always, if you know you're not going to win it, don't take the fight, don't die. The gray screen is not so good. If you know you can win it, go ahead and smash him in. And if you truly have no idea, I actually recommend taking the fight because you need to learn, you need to understand, you need the feel of what you can do at this particular stage with this itemization against that champion with that itemization. But as we would have noted, hey, Echo had his reset button, and even though we used our ult, we still focused a bit on the crab. So everything's up now. Echo shows bottom lane, hey, you don't have ult, I do, let's see you. Okay, well, you die. This part of the game, as we transition to the mid-game, is where junglers get a bit clueless. You're seeing waiting around in brushes, looking to push the map because no one has taken a tier 1 yet. And when games are like this, there's no elevation of game state to start moving pieces around where the game can get messy and assassins like Kha'Zix can do what they do best. And that's why I love this play, because we're going to set ourselves up for the best way to carry right now. We go ahead, make a mechanical play, get it another kill. We do our red, we do our Krugs. We remove the bottom quadrant from counter jungling position. Why? We know the Echo's gonna reset and go straight to the dragon. We also see the Tentacle Lady doing unnatural things to our rock. We also have our blue side quadrant, a top scuttle, as well as a herald. We can use that to really punch this game open in the other direction. So what I would like to see here, if possible, is, hey, can we kill the split pusher? If you know your champion, go ahead and do so, because obviously we can take the herald afterwards. However, if you feel like you really need the RE or your bottom lane, I don't mind just going ahead and taking our camps or taking the scuttle, doing the herald. But what I want to see afterwards is then counter jungling, because Echo's spending a lot of time on the bottom side. I don't want you to go to the mid lane, drop the herald, get into a fight, and die. So even though this game was the Kha'Zix doing some good things, it's also the Kha'Zix doing some bad things. But you can see the good things are currently outweighing the bad things. Ahri is able to kill the Alawi, but that pressure means that the enemy team is going to have a Baron prior. What you do in this situation when they have strong split pushes, the map feels like it's slowly getting away from you. You can still win the game very, very easily. All you got to do is ensure, one, you kill that split pusher. Do it ideally before Baron is taken, but hey, if they take a Baron, that's fine. We do now have numbers advantage plus the most fed members, the Kha'Zix and the Ahri. Kha'Zix sets up in a beautiful flanking position using a bit of the numbers advantage they have. Malphite ult, Zyra ult, it doesn't matter, Alawi shows up. Just reposition in and out using your E, using your R, using your flash, using your blue smite, using whatever you have in your kit with whatever champion you're playing. Whatever champion you are, just know, farming or ganking, fighter or Soraka, use your team fighting mechanics appropriately on the right targets, and in this moment here, that's when you lock down a W. Now you can sneak the dragon, now you can deal with a Zyra. It's pretty much an equal game now. You're just facing off the mid game, and how do I deal with the macro of a split push? How do I deal with the macro of the team fighting? How do I deal with the farming cadences? All of the mid to late game transition stuff you really have to understand to carry games ahead or behind are now possible. So in a way, yeah, we're in this game that's perfectly imperfect, which is why I chose it, because our mistakes led to us needing to correct it, which led to us needing to basically rely on certain plays being made on the map and what we could then do about it to maximize our own strengths. Fortunately, I've made a video talking about just that, because as much as this was a great example of acceptance and understanding exactly what to do in negative situations, to accept things, to play around them, to play the map as it is, not the way it should be, and also to show exactly what we can give away at a high level with lazy and bad pathing, it's also worth noting that this Kha'Zix's pathing did not improve for the rest of the game. He got picked off a few times, and the enemy team actually ended up swinging that victory. But if you're a farming jungler in these situations, just saying, hey, take the Gromp, see you later, that's powerful. Hey, you have the dragon here, I'm going to take your whole top side quadrant and maybe gank the top side. But it also showcases how we get in our own way so much and how we can cost our own games even if it doesn't appear that way in the moment. That's why I'm showing this to you. That's why I just updated the jungle improvement PDF on my website. That's why I made all the jungle courses for your MMR to tackle specific things that each MMR needs to become a total and complete jungler. Really unfortunate that that happened, because he positioned himself so well after that dragon snack to be able to win the game. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can Flame Horizon the enemy jungler every single game, because whether you win the early game and you lose it through a throw, or you're behind and you can't come back, it just won't make a difference, because you can always, and with any jungler, make the right play using this strategy. You will be in a position to win just by having that Flame Horizon. Hey, you saw I did it on Kai'Sa, I do it on Mundo, I do it on Volibear, I've done it on Zyra jungle, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it, and we're gonna fix your early game along the way to make sure that you have the best chance to carry, win, and climb. But don't forget, if you need an extra helping hand and you want to climb faster than 70% of other players and get to gold, diamond, and master tier about 2 years faster than everybody else, have a look at Virkayu.gg through the link in the description below and find your best bespoke jungle coaching package, along with courses dedicated to your specific MMR to help you climb to the next tier, all filled with relevant and actionable information, as well as the free jungle improvement PDF to help you carry, win, and climb, and learn how to Vardavir yourself. Click the link below to join me on Virkayu.gg, a jungler's learning paradise. And here we go, we're Graves, we're starting on the red buff, and we have a Fleet Footwork, Conqueror rune set, that's right. And we're going to have a different sort of start that you probably normally see. In the case of the Lee Sin on the enemy team, he is going Leashless Raptors, which is of course somewhat the meta at the moment. I think we may have seen that a few times recently. Mostly though, from Raptors red Krugs into the bottom lane gank, enemy jungler tries to match and then you get invaded, or you have a nice old 3v3 or something like this. The Graves, on the other hand, is going to have some suboptimal pathing techniques that I'm going to want to talk about, but also some stuff that's probably quite representative of what we're seeing at the time now. This Rengar didn't play in Season 4 because Ryan Choi, original 4x Doran stacker from the lane of top, would say, hey guys, just ban Jax. And this Rengar did not ban Jax. So, Silas was the Kha'Zix in the mid lane, Aphelios, Thresh, Jinx, Tahm Kench, and now Graves here is going into a wolf camp. Now this is the downside of this particular clear, because what it does is it brings you here, and this will be your third camp. That's a 3. But it won't give you level 3, right? That's the thing. You're still level 2. And that's the big issue with this kind of clear when you want to do the rotations that which the Graves is about to, do. We have here the Rengar dragging down level 1 into the burst saying, hey, can we fight here? Can I bait this? And I don't know if the Jax is going to fall for it, but the Rengar goes in, gets level 2. He will fall for it here, and the Graves is showing right up. We're going to maybe burn some flash into TP. There we go. We'll take the flash to flash from the top laners. We don't waste hours, of course, because that would be silly. We scan now, make sure we get this, a little bit of a reset with the E, and we can observe this lane as we fall back down. Or, if everyone disrespects it, you just kind of come back around the top side here. Let's move the chat so we can see the mechanics. Nice bait by the Rengar there, good movement speed boost. We'll cover the Lee Sin in a second, but this is the unfortunate nature of jungle. What do I call this? The proximity assist. What did the Lee Sin do in the meantime? A red Raptor's Grump, and that's better because now you're level 3 of 3 camps. You have 2 camps that are going to respawn in 2 minutes 15. We have a volatile mid lane. We'll do a bit of a minion ward hub, dodge the chains of destiny by the Gragas. How he did that, I don't know. And the Graves is now on the top side, getting his proximity assist. From the Lee Sin's perspective, you would see the Graves top lane and you go, okay, that's 13 CS. Obviously, he cleared the ward. That's a +1 freebie. But you're going to see 12 and level 2 when he shows up, which means he's doing that sort of, I don't say inner clear because the red Raptors Wolves Blue is an archaic clear for this reason. It's 4 camps that get level 3 when there's so many variants that give you straight up level 3 with 3 camps. One of them being Blue Wolves Red, one of them being Red Raptors Grump. Obviously you can do buff Grump, but that's a bit of a legacy clear purely because we want 2 camps to respawn at 215 and the buffs will always be there for us, like the Lee Sin here. He does the Red Raptors Grump, he goes down and does the gankings. If more stuff happens, then the Raptors and the Grump will respawn high levels, he gets that extra golden fusion and the blue buff is still there. And I'm just interjecting here that this is the correct play because the idea is to go Red Raptors Wolves Grump, get your level 3, have the good sequencing technique into the blue, and then of course you can flex that rotation. The downside of doing this 5 camp variant is of course that you're level 2. Whereas if you did Red Krugs Raptors into your Wolves and Soldiers, you could rotate just the same, skipping the blue quadrant, and then be level 3 at least. But it's not a big issue because you're so close to level 3. But in the context of reactively pathing to an event like this, whatever clear you're doing, whatever's happening on the map, if you see an ability to get kills, to help your laner like this, you move, right? So it doesn't really matter necessarily what the clear was. It's just worth noting why that sort of Red Raptors Wolves Blue is not particularly good anymore, and why 5 campers do have their downsides, and you're seeing it right here. But in the meantime, the Graves has fallen back to take his blue. He did get 3 from the assist experience. The Jax is showing a lot of disrespect here, and this is the problem with top laners. They do not track this stuff, but at the same time, what is the Lee Sin doing incorrectly? He did not ping it out. Challenger GM game in Korea, no pings, no anticipation, no saying, hey Jax, guess what, my guy? The Graves is still there. Because I know 12 CS showing up without the blue buff, level 2, that he's 99% of boom, boom, boom. That's almost always, actually, that's literally always the case when you see that. And the other option was if he obviously did the blue Wolves Raptors and ganked bottom lane, but that would be inverted, obviously. Lee Sin, on the other hand, basically decides, let me flex swap. What that basically means is we started our entire clear, right, by going down. And now in theory, because we've taken these camps off the map, this will be up already and this will be up. So we could easily take this quadrant, gank the mid lane, look to counter jungle, dive, and fall back to the blue side, right, where we'll have the Grump and the Wolves respawning. Yes, but we also know that the Graves repeat gank top lane would have fallen back down to make sure he had that quadrant cleared, at least for a good reset, and now we'll reset and come to the bottom side. So what he was trying to do was actually set up a counter gank to the Graves. However, what he didn't factor in was the time needed for the Graves to reset and put himself in a better position for the counter gank. And a better way to do that would have just been to do the Krugs into the Raptors and cut down with deep vision and so on, but also you got to watch your back timing for your bot lane. If they're resetting and roaming, that gank's not there for the Graves anyway, so the counter gank is lost. Now, you've gone to the top side here, okay? And the biggest problem with this particular play from the Lee Sin's perspective is we've left our respawn Grump on the map, which is not what we want to do at all. Excuse me there, sorry Lee Sin, I ruined you the surprise, but we'll watch it play through right now. Lee Sin shows up, he says, yes, it is time to go gaming, hits the Q. There we go. That's about as much as I'll commentate on that because he was pretty much dead. And the Graves now basically says, okay, well, Thresh is there, I can't cut in for this. They have Prio, I guess I'll just take my Wolves and prevent the potential counter jungling, but both junglers not having the most pristine sequencing with their pathing. Graves obviously it was the right decision, yeah. There's no question through all of this, as you're thinking about it, that he should have rotated to this. He made the right play. 100% he made the right play. He saw the Rengar, he goes in, oh my goodness gracious, well that was not the right play. We don't want to overcommit here either because Lee Sin in the area. Does he reset after the kill? Does he go here and collapse down? Only he knows. You don't. You have to assess these possibilities. Gragas will then of course use his passive and get some juicy healing, and now we can disengage. We have here the kill by the Rengar, thank goodness. And so we shove that out and we move on to the bottom side, and obviously here we see the Lee Sin and we go, okay, now I know that you reset. That's great for me because you have 2 extra long swords. I'm gonna go ahead and snack this Scuttle Crab quickly. I like this. You see, I talk about this a lot in coaching and a lot in the courses. If something's happening where you cannot collapse to it, can I sneak something, thieve something, take something away very quickly? Now the bottom lane are going straight all in here. Phyllis is going 1,000 years aggression, but Graves is here. Graves is not needed. Graves will cut off the Lee Sin. See, this is good. Lee Sin goes in. Lee Sin has the advantage here. Double extra longsword versus the serrated Dirk. However, oh, that was a nice zap by the... Oh, never mind. Anyway. Jeremy Clarkson, anyway. What the Graves did well was say, okay, look, I see the 2v2. I'm going to cut down because I know Lee Sin's here. Lee Sin said, hey, I know the Graves is here. We both better cut down. Fortunately, the 2v2 coin flip is won in the favor of Graves. And now, obviously, we have the Tom Kench going abyssal voyaging onto the Thresh. Graves says, you know what, you die, but I take the snack. Let me shove this very quickly. So far, so good, right? But look at the CS all of a sudden. Look at the CS, and if you weren't paying attention to the CS, are you surprised a little bit? Because it didn't feel like that lead was necessarily that big at the stage, the 20 CS. It is though. And this is where it begins. This is where your Flame Horizon begins. This is early sequencing, ensuring you get those quadrants and the Lee Sin overbacking, right? Not paying attention to where the Graves is going to be necessarily, skipping this Grump, and then skipping his Krugs. Those 2 skipped camps alone are the big issue. Because he leaves this on the map, then he goes topside, yeah? And then he goes back to base again and he skips this Krug camp. That's 2 edge camps left on the map, that's 8 CS. Instead of, 12 CS deficit, that's a 20 CS deficit. And it's not a big deal, but the respawn timers and so on are important. Now the Graves decides to go coin flipping into this with no mid prior, not paying attention to the Kruggers. We all make mistakes sometimes. This is one of those moments. He decided to just go kind of using Bob prior to snag a dragon, do some invading into the blue side quadrant here. The Jax and Rengar just absolutely dueling it out like champions. And now the Sylas is still mid lane here. Sylas, at any point in time, buddy, you can show up and do some stuff. The problem is, as you're seeing right here, that stuff is impossible because numbers disadvantage. And that's always what you have to focus on here. Don't care if people get these kills. I don't care if you win these 4v3s. The risk assessment has to be done correctly. Because bad risk assessment like this is what causes you to be doomed. Now, that being said, the Graves is respawned, and instead of going to the top side, instead of doing this and this, which is what you normally would do, right? In low elo, you look at this and you go, okay, is it doomed for my team? Is there a possibility I can get there and get cleaned up and get kills, get experience, do some counter jungling? If yes, to an 80% degree, I'm gonna rotate. If it's like, oh, there's only a 20% chance that I can actually do anything, then why don't you just go and kill this guy, take this and this, or like whatever order you like at the same time. If you wish to be spicy, fall back to your blue side quadrant, make the next plays. Let this die. Let this be what it is. Because the guy's most likely going to do his blue Grump. He might get a dragon. Who really cares basically at this point? You feast on the bones of the Jax. You get the juicy gold generating machine of the Herald. You can do a full sequence down, ideally. Again, another 24 CS free for you. Huge advantage while they wasted time fighting. And even if your team loses, wins, it doesn't really matter. You got yourself infused. So that's also the Flame Horizon technique. However, we had an 80% chance of success, and now what we can do is become the aggressor. However, everything that you're about to watch is the caveat of at some point in League of Legends, no matter how good your decision making is, you have to have the mechanics to execute the game plan. You have to understand your threshold of damage, how much you can tank, your mobility, what the enemy champions want to do. How can we play this? Do you see how he goes straight into melee range into the Aphelios and kills him? Aphelios has a range advantage. You say, well, if I go up in your phase, you die because I have a serrated dirk, noon quiver, longsword, boots, Graves. I can do that to you. The Graves knew immediately that that fight was a fight he could win. Lee Sin low, Thresh low, just dodge the hook, and then all in the Aphelios as best you can, snack the kills up, fall back to the objective, kill conversion ratio. While he's dead, what can I take that adds to my CS? That's always what we're looking for. Now, if you're winning the game, this is great. If you're losing the game, I don't really care, because if you make the play when you're losing, then you're a beast. The point is that we now have a 20 CS lead. We see the Lee Sin through the deep vision. We have the Tahm Kench roaming mid lane. They're going all in on Jinx. We're going to rotate and react to this. She does burn the cleanse. Can we save her? Probably not, but can we clean anybody up? Again, that eats wards. Nice little dodger on their fillers, squiggly spaghetti, and then we don't overcommit. Restraint is your friend. Restraint is what allows you to pop this game up, because at least it's still 6-1. He has high KP, more than the Graves. Graves only is less than 50%, but that's because he influenced the top lane. And too many times I see these memes about never ganking top lane, and too many times the top laners believe it exists. But if you're both up top side guys in a snowballing lane, look at the goodness that you can have. This is huge for us. Huge! Because now we can of course focus everywhere. We can gank and impact every lane. Maybe not mid lane, but we did drive by, right? We did show up. We attempted to help. He was low, the Gragas was low. We just helped the shove so he can reset without dying. We used that then to counter gank and do some stuff in the bottom lane. The balanced approach will always be king. The market is king, the map is king. And the balanced approach of jungling will be good in any meta. The Rengar is overcommitting on the top side here. Well, you know, overcommitting is a strong word because he's level 10 and he destroys the Lee Sin. But the Lee Sin's like, I better do the flash kick. Well then. Was it still overcommitting at this point? In theory, it's overcommitting. You know, by the strictest definition, you're pushing past vision line when a jungler was down on the bottom side taking that stuff, no objective. He's 99% coming to the top side. You should know this, you're low, but he's still Rengar level 10. No, at least I know to burn everything, so you know what, we'll take it. Graves says, okay, that's great. I know you're gonna have to fall back to here to regen a little bit. We'll do a little quadrant cut into the mid lane. What I'm gonna do is drag the Herald down so that when you do that, if you do show up here to go this way or this way, I can see it as best I can. Obviously, you've got a little bit of a fog of war cone here. That's why I like to put a control ward in this little spot. But, you know, we're expecting some kind of Lee Sin action here because once you do this and then you float back down here, you regen, you get some cash money. It's called a quadrant clear when you finish one quadrant and then you do some stuff. If you wanted a full sequence and get a Flame Horizon, you just keep going. But obviously in a losing game state, you can't afford to necessarily do that. You maybe need to do something else. So we have the Graves here snacking this baby up. He steals it away. Lee Sin does the quadrant with a different angle of approach than expected. The disengage becomes the disengage because that's what Gragas is good at. And of course, Silas snacks it up. We're going to go and cross this shadowing saying, look, I see you. I know what we're doing. Look at the CS lead now, 30. You see how quickly it becomes a ballooned event just by one mechanical outplay. And we died, by the way. Lee Sin's only died one more time, so it's not like it's basically shifted. We have been in the right position to push waves. We've been in the right position to shadow and hold waves. We've been in the right position to take objectives, +8. And now basically we're saying, okay, well I know Lee Sin's gonna cross this way. Let's go fight and use it because this bottom lane looks absolutely primed. The Thresh goes for the ult and we're just gonna flash it to make sure we can stay within auto range to get the kill. Lee Sin over the wall. We slice and dice to kill the Aphelios. Lee Sin goes back over the wall. Remember, we have the shield bow gaming. And obviously now we have 2 and a bit plates. The Silas rotates, gets disengaged upon the Gragas shows up. Well, Jinx is taking the turret aggro, so she'll die. That's unfortunate. But we'll focus the turret as you do. Focus the CS as you do. And then clean up kills afterwards. Come on, we can do it. Nice Q. Boom. The Q drag. And we'll go back to base as the Herald does another charge. So the concept of how do I Flame Horizon a jungler in this particular case, it's not very difficult in the first 15 minutes, right? Now it's when it becomes difficult. So if you're a jungler who's ahead, you're a jungler who's behind, you're a jungler who's equal, and you're not Flame Horizing enemy junglers frequently. And again, I do this on all my junglers all the time. I do it on Zyra, I do it against Nidleys, I do it on Mundo, I've done it with Ornn, a little bit less so with Ornn. Volibear I've done it with. You can do it on any jungler, basically. And it's all about playing just like this Graves, because the Lee Sin, by, all metrics, hasn't played terribly, but his ganking prowess, his looking for angles has not been perfect. However, this here is a tip that will get anyone to diamond. Watch this. We're going to go ahead and kill the Jack. So the most important thing here is, am I strong enough to kill the solo top laner? The answer has to always be yes. If not, then we didn't play perfectly. Lee Sin shows up. Does he want to do this? The answer should always be no. You want to get to 15 minutes, no jungler, no top laner, no laner in the game, and ISO can beat you 1v1. If you mechanically play perfectly, always. That's got to be the rule. If you mess up or whatever, I love it when that happens. If you mess it up, that's one thing, but you've got to have the power. Why? Because in silver, in gold, in platinum, in diamond, look at this. What is this called? It's called split pushing. We have a winning bot lane. They can't break open the tier 1 mid lane because we have the Thresh. They feel like he's going to go in and get hooked and most likely will fall. Good night, ugly toad. We have the Silas pushing on the bottom lane against the Gragas. This dragon is available. We shove. Now, if their whole team kills your team and takes this one with no Baron on the map, then we just keep pushing, right? We take this, we take this, we take this, we'll cut him, we'll take this, we'll fall back here, we'll try and defend this from any sort of counter jungling, but you just gotta do the map play. Look at this. You are watching this. Always watching. Okay, Silas gets a kill. Now Silas will most likely die. Okay, we're watching. We're seeing this. Can I rotate and make something happen? Yay or nay? That's the assessment. If yay, make the rotation. You will get better at these the more you make them. What's the alternative? Should this be a doom scenario if you're in that sort of bucket? Boom, boom. Oh yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not even... Let me show you this again, excuse me. I'll explain in a second. So the Rengar gets hooked here. He dies. Obviously, the Graves shows up here. Off we go. There we go. Okay. Ult over the wall. Nice and cheeky. Another order on the Graves. A little bit of a side dash. Always the lateral movement, right? You want to keep your true grit stack and make sure you're within AA range. Okay, that's important. If this was 100% a doom scenario, I'm on this. I'm snacking this up and sneaking it away. If I can take something else because they sort of overchase here like they would in silver, I'll take these things and catch bottom lane and chop it up. Beyond vision line, mind you, so you have to be very, very careful. That's where a blue trinket, this thing, far side alteration, is great because you can slap it down and watch sort of collapses. But ideally what we're doing is we're snacking this and at least looping back and then maybe doing a full sequence and pushing this out, controlling this, whatever is necessary to defend your camps from being denied by the enemy jungler. In this situation where it's a W and we rotate and we get the kills, then yes, 100%, my friends. Take his stuff, catch the wave, shove the wave, fall back to the objective, take your quadrant. That's what you do. That's where you balloon your CS advantage. Minus 12 for him, plus 12 for you. That you catch a wave no one's dealing with. You shove it. Again, not beyond vision line, and only when there's gray screens. Then you fall back to the next thing, the next thing. The Lee Sin's like, hey, I better go fight him because I need to win this game. Kills the Jinx. The Graves like, well, I'm holding this wave. We see the Rengar topside. We watch this. We're looking at it. We're going, okay. You're always watching this. All right. The red team thinks, yes, guys, we're getting shutdowns. We're going to win. We can maybe Baron soon. There's no Baron, obviously, for another, just over a minute and a half. Graves goes back to base. Spends his cash money gold. Comes back to the mid lane. Can we make a play here as a team? We have the TP coming in. Let's have a look here. We can't now because Graves is dead. Sorry. We can't now because Rengar is dead. And the TP was burned. So do we overcommit and die 2v5? No. We try and wave close best we can, but we do not die. Give the turret. Do not die. That is the only thing I can tell you right now. Cool. They're going to disengage and spend their gold. Boom, 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 boom. Can we snack this while they're base, actually? And when you sort of see this flow in the mid game, this is when the Flame Horizon just gets realized almost every game. And if you're losing, you'll figure out, oh, wait a second, I'm up 2-3 levels. I can win any fight by myself. If you're winning, you just close games out really quickly. Because you're causing pressure, pressure, pressure. You get to fall back to objectives. They cannot afford to run through the jungle to fight you because you have that huge advantage. If your team are dying, you're surviving and just catching waves. If your team are dying and you're surviving and just giving up something a little bit with a bit of wave clear, it at least thins out the waves so that they cannot overpush here. Then you control your whole quadrant, take the next objective. Now we go deep into the jungle. Why? Because we can win every fight. When your early game is good, when your mid game is better, your late game is free. All right, that's the saying. Look at this, 76, 189, we've achieved it. The Lee Sin is trying to fight to stay in the game. Literally fight, because his own econ early from farming wasn't good enough to mesh with his ganks. Did his laners play well? No. Was top lane won by the Graves? Yes. What did he do to truly win the game? Can you honestly tell me that he did a lot? I don't think so. You know, he kills a Rengar down here, that's great, but now we're losing an inhib. And you know what, you just let them have fun, and maybe we can go in, we'll get saved here by the Toad, and we can now leave the scenario, don't throw. We'll kite down and take this one over here. Everyone goes back to base, and obviously now we want to make sure we're in a position to take the Baron, so we see an overcommit, and we say, yes, I'll kill you. This is it, my friends. Be the strongest person in the game with the most gold, the best mechanics. From this, you just snack the Baron with 2 people. Now again, watch the enemy, look, watch our team. The Jinx is 248, 632, 864, 1-4-12. You know, look, they're gonna go in here overcommit by themselves. Look at, this is Challenger, but this is also Silver, no? Gold, Platinum. It's the human condition. 2 kills to the least since. You're like, oh, that's where we got the cleanup. Yeah, that's where we got the cleanup. Hey, now, does it matter that this is a thing? No, just go and kill everybody. That's the goal. Slowed. Over the wall. Off we go. TP committed. 5-man stack. Now, obviously play correctly because the 3v5 is not exactly an easy fight. You have to know if you have to leave or not. That is always the trick. We do get hooked by the Thresh. The Silas goes too deep. We ult over the wall to respace. The Q did hit. Will he take it? We dodge the hook again. Gragas slides over the wall. Oh, we get body slammed into the wall. We have to flash to disengage. The Jax follows us through the leap strike, but now that's a Q against the wall, so it's a short return, and he dies. We'll snack the red buff as well. This is not crashing. Nice mechanics. Nice gold lead. 14-1-1. No one can do anything. Now, because we got the dead Jax, we clear the visions, and we push up for one last fight. So if you're saying, well, it looks so smooth. It's so smooth when you challenge. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, but as you can see, there were also mistakes and downsides and different variations and you know, improvements, obviously. But overall, it really simply came down to ensuring that he sequenced at the right time, had river control, shoved and held waves, knew when to give plays up, rotated when he had to rotate, didn't rotate when he didn't, took the objectives when there was an opportunity to do so, and obviously, objective control kill conversion ratio. That is a huge Flame Horizon, so hopefully you can see the little bit of a template on how good the flow in the mid game can be, looking from one thing to the next. Nice little nugget of wisdom for those of us who like Flame Horizons. I do. It's one of the things I have that I really enjoy doing. But obviously, if you want to understand how to play in the meta in a more general sense, click the video in the box on the top right, and it will give you those answers with more effects.